Welcome, everybody. My name is Fei, and I'm an art mentor and founder at Wing Canvas. And welcome to our live critique and Q&A session today. So for all you portfolio students out there, I hope that this stream will bring you lots of value. A little bit about me. So I actually went to school for illustration at Art Center, and this is some of my portfolio pieces. Some of them were from school and some of them were was my professional work, but I've dabbled in illustration, I've dabbled in graphic design, and I've worked in advertising, and I have had the opportunity to look at hundreds of portfolios. I'm gonna say hundreds, if not thousands of portfolios, both student portfolios as well as professional portfolios. So I, discovered my own personal journey, back when I first went to art school. I went to school for fine art, and I had no idea what I was getting into. And as a fine artist, now I can kind of tell you, if I had to choose again, I would have probably done my research, because I didn't stay in fine art. I switched majors to illustration because I discovered that I really am just a storyteller. So I don't really, I didn't enjoy fine art as much as I did illustration, and this whole journey of discovery is a lifelong endeavor that should be an enjoyable experience, not a stressful one. And hopefully I can share some tips with you and some lifelong lessons that will help you with your creative transformation. So again, this is some of my illustration work, and this is some of my design work. So halfway through illustration school, I fell in love with design, and I happened to work with an artist and designer named Milton Glaser. Some of you might have heard of him. He is a very, very famous illustrator, graphic designer. He designed the I Love New York logo, just to give you some context. So he made me fall in love with design, with typography, communication, and I really learned that I really enjoyed visual storytelling. So storytelling through typography, storytelling through imagery, and so this is some of my design work. So I spent about 7 years in graphic design and in advertising, and I had a blast designing logos, ads, and all kinds of really cool projects with a lot of collaborators. And then this is some of my recent work. So funny enough, I recently went back into fine arts, and this was done at an artist retreat. So I was actually sponsored to go to China with a group of international artists, and we made art together, and it was exhibited internationally. And some of these pieces are huge, and they are in collections halfway across the globe. So that was really exciting. So I want to show you some of the work that I did when I was a child. So the piece on the left was my very first piece, titled Traffic. And I did it when I was 5 years old. And so I would always just draw every day. And so my parents recognized that I, had a knack for art, and put me in art school. And I got to learn with amazing people. And then the image on the right is also called Traffic. And it is a piece that's about, 5 feet or 3 by 6 feet. One of my largest, most ambitious portrait paintings. It's a depiction of Vietnam when I was actually stuck in traffic, and I kind of turned around and made eye contact with a whole bunch of people. So in my painting, I tend to illustrate images that stand out to me. So this is a series that is called travel memoirs. So, my journey as an artist, obviously, you can see that transformation. And I really, really hope that those of you who are watching, even if you think my work is not good enough, I don't think I will get in, this is too hard, all of those things, you just have to keep going and just keep going, find supportive people who will help you along your journey, and you will get there. So just keep dreaming big. So without further ado, let's get started. I think one of the most common mistakes is not being sure about which program is right for you. So this is something that is very, very common, that I see a lot of young artists make this mistake. They come to me with their portfolio and I ask them, which programs are you applying for? And they still are unsure. They're not exactly sure, what's involved in the program. They're unsure between illustration and graphic design, or maybe architecture and interior design. Like, they're not actually sure. And applying to a program that you're not sure about is probably going to be the biggest mistake. And that's one of my biggest mistakes. So when I went to art school, again, I thought I want to be a fine artist. Did I do my research? No. Did I know what, did I know what a fine artist even did? I think I had an idea, but when I went to my first fine art class, I knew that it was not right for me. And so I had to switch my major. So I went to Art Center. These are some of the well-known art schools in North America. If you're tuning in from internationally, I'm sure there are a very, very large selection of amazing schools that you can apply for. So personally, I went to Art Center, College of Design for Illustration, and I really enjoyed it, but I stumbled into it without really knowing what I wanted to do. So don't apply for a program you're unsure about. So how do you actually, how do you become sure of a program? How do you know which program is right for you or which school is right for you? So a lot of people come to me for recommendations, and I always tell them the same thing, like, whatever you decide is up to you. But some tips I have to actually do your research is to go to the grad shows. So almost every school out there, they usually have a graduation showcase. Sometimes it's in person. These days it's online, but you have access to it. We have access to the internet at our fingertips. You are able to see, countless portfolio examples. You can actually go to these grad shows and visit the artists in person, ask them questions about their program. So this is an example of an illustration, a grad show that I found very appealing. This is a wall from OCAD's Drawing and Painting. So I go to the grad show every year because that's where I find the freshest talent. So I find it's a great place for employers to hire artists, and it's also a great place to get to know your program, to get to see all of the work that comes out of it, because sometimes the work that you see in the grad shows may not be what you expect from the school itself. So that's probably one of the best ways you can figure it out. So this is actually when I went to visit Jay's grad show. Jay is a graphic designer, so he graduated from York Sheridan. If you look at some of our previous videos, you will actually see Jay's entrance portfolio. So here I visited Jay at his grad show, asked him lots of questions, and I really thought that the graphic design program at York Sheridan was great. There were so many, original projects. I had a lot of fun. So, don't apply to programs unless you are sure that that's what you want to do. And another way you can really do your research is to go to forums. You can do a lot of reading, ask questions, visit the campus. Make sure that it's the right decision, because it could be 4 years of your life, right? It is probably the biggest decision that you have to make. And if you're not sure, talk to a creative professional. Talk and shadow an illustrator, shadow a graphic designer. I've known many young artists who had to cold call. Actually, Jay told me a story. He said that he, at part of his program, he had to actually cold call a graphic designer and interview them. And he ended up building great relationships. And, now is the best time to be able to pick the brains of creative professionals, because they are more available and willing to help than ever before. So that is my first tip. Okay, so our second tip is don't skim over the instructions. Read the requirements carefully. I can't tell you how many times I have seen people get disqualified for not following instructions. So you're probably thinking this is so obvious, I know, but sometimes people are applying for multiple programs. So, some people, I've heard one of my students was applying for 7 different programs. And I told them, I was like, 7 programs, that is a lot to keep track of, right? So personally, I wouldn't apply for 7. I would probably choose my top 3. I know some people who just applied to 1, so they're putting all their eggs in one basket. So I wouldn't do that either. I would definitely, choose my top 3, put all of my energy towards my top choice, and carefully read the instructions. So I find the best thing to do is to start a doc or create a spreadsheet where you can put all the requirements, together so you can compare them, right? Make a table, do whatever it is you need to do to keep everything organized, right? So that you're comparing apples to apples, you're comparing one school's requirements to the other, you're comparing all of the sketchbook requirements, and that way you don't get overwhelmed. So one of the stories I have for you as an adjudicator. So one time I was an adjudicator for a visual arts high school, and I noticed that a lot of the people who submitted their work, and this was in person. So, I was at the school, and a lot of people used the school's easels to display their work. And in the written requirements, the written document to the applicants said, bring your own easels. Do not use the school's easels. But everybody used the school's easels. So I think what happened was, one person said, oh, here's a free easel, I'm just going to use it. And then everybody else just kind of followed suit. So just because one person is doing something doesn't mean that it's the right thing. So read those instructions very, very carefully and pay attention to the details, because those borrowed easels really, pissed off some teachers, because now they don't have easels to do their class. So, it can be the smallest thing that can really make a big difference. So if I'm looking at your work and I'm already upset, or pissed off that you are not following the instructions and you are not, using your own equipment, that is already a negative first impression. So it doesn't matter how good your book is, that has already made a negative impression on me. And I'm probably, not going to, or any adjudicator who goes in with that feeling will probably, not give you the best grade that you deserve. So make sure that you read the requirements carefully, because some schools ask for descriptions, other schools only ask for the medium and the size. So make sure that you're not just creating one portfolio and sending it to everybody. Okay. Also, if you're not sure about something, don't be afraid to inquire. Don't just follow the herd, because the herd can lead you in the wrong direction. And I've seen that happen way too many times. All right. So my third tip for you is don't start your portfolio with a weak piece. Okay? So make a really strong first impression. People typically remember the first thing they see and the last thing they see. So I would advise anybody preparing a portfolio to put in your strongest piece first. By strongest, I mean most technically impressive and most conceptually impressive. So put your best piece first and put your second best piece last, okay? Be a boss, not weak sauce. I love this quote. And the bang is there because it's, I like to say, start with a bang and end with a bang, okay? That's how you make a strong first impression and a strong last impression. It's just psychology, right? We always remember the first thing and the last thing that we see, typically speaking, and absolutely do not put fan art first. I will get to fan art in just a second, but do not put fan art first because usually schools don't like that and they will write you off immediately, okay? So put your best piece first. Okay, so my next tip is don't show too many pieces that use the same medium, subject, or style, unless it's explicitly required. So some animation portfolios will request only line drawings, and that's absolutely okay because, that's what is required. So if you have very specific requirements like a drawing test or an essay or something like that, that is very specific, then this does not apply. But usually speaking, when you show too many pieces that are similar, it actually limits your variety. So variety is something that is really, really important in school portfolios because it allows the adjudicators to see that you are exploring different types of styles, different types of mediums. They can sense your sense of adventure. They can see your versatility, especially if you're applying for design or fashion. You don't want to include, if you're applying for fashion, you don't want to include all dresses, right? You want to show that you can design for men, you can design for women, that you can, design for children, that you're thinking about all different types of applications. So if you have questions in the chat, just please know I will get to them. There is a slight delay. Amorous Joseph says, can you do a video about fashion portfolios or any portfolio setup? For sure. So fashion is, so all of the portfolio videos that you see can be applied to almost any type of art school because the principles are all the same, right? So what I'm sharing with you today can be applied for any type of portfolio, any type of, whether it's photography or fashion or interior design. All of the principles are the same, right? Your work should be conceptual, it should have variety, it should showcase your process. I will get to all of those in a second, but just because you don't see specific examples, it doesn't mean that you can't apply these tips to any type of creative portfolio. Okay, so versatility and variety is really, really important because I can't tell you how many portfolios I've seen that are just pencil. Like, can I say boring, right? I've seen sketchbooks that are just pencil, and I've seen, lots of, I'll tell you the most common pieces that I see that are really boring, okay? All pencil portfolios or portfolios that are very heavy one subject. For example, lots of portraiture, realistic portraiture that are all bored looking faces, that are done with just one medium. So I want to see, if you have realistic pieces, I want to see some abstract stuff. If you do really amazing tight drawings, I want to see some loose stuff. If you are a loose artist and you like to, you know, be experimental, and you know, you let's say you're working with drips, right? Let's say you're using lots of texture. I want to see super clean work, like rendered work. So from variety can be variety in style, it can be variety in subject matter, variety in thinking and exploring ideas. So variety is really important in a school portfolio. Not as important in a professional portfolio, because that can be more style driven, right? When you come out of school, you already have a style or something that you're known for, you know, for illustration or for fashion, for example. You can specialize when you're out of school, but when you're going into school, you know, you want to show as much variety as possible. Okay, so I'm going to share with you a quote. If you do the bare minimum, expect bare minimum results, right? If you want to be great, work to be great. Nothing just happens. So this is a quote by J.J. Watt. And this brings me to my next tip for you, and that's don't do the bare minimum. So what I mean by bare minimum is if your school requires 10 to 20 pieces, you know, doing 10 would count as the bare minimum. So, you know, you don't necessarily want to show too many, but you also don't want to show that the bare minimum, because when I see that you've only submitted 10 pieces, I'm either going to assume that you're a very good editor and you're being very selective, or you just don't have enough work. And usually it's the second, right? If you have 10 pieces and they're all outstanding and solid, then, you know, maybe that's okay, but typically speaking, you don't want to do the bare minimum. So if your school, you know, says 10 to 20 pieces, showing 15 is better than showing 10. Showing 12 is better than showing 10. Just give a little extra, right? So that it doesn't appear like you're doing the bare minimum. All right. So let's talk about fan art. So don't include obvious fan art. So, you know, fan art is difficult to talk about, because there can be so many different types of fan art, right? The fan art that schools don't want to see is the obvious fan art. Like I can see that, oh, it's Deadpool. You know, I can recognize these characters from popular movies, TV shows, games. I see them over and over again. You know, fan art is so common, and, you know, there's nothing wrong with fan art. First of all, I want to put this out there. There's nothing wrong with fan art outside of a portfolio. Fan art is, a lot of the times, it's why we start making art, right? We draw our favorite characters. It's the beginning of our journey. I know that when I was a teen, I drew lots of Sailor Moon because I loved anime, and everybody loves anime these days, but school portfolios do not. And some of them explicitly say do not include fan art. Okay, so if you have a lot of fan art and you're kind of freaking out a little bit inside and you're saying, oh my gosh, what do I include? Is there good fan art? And the answer is yes, there is good fan art, but you have to be very careful, because the obvious fan art is, oh, I can recognize who that is. So that is the biggest no-no. That's one of the biggest mistakes in portfolios. Is I see people recreating a Disney character or a Marvel character, or like redrawing them in their style, but still I can recognize them. So I'm going to show you some examples of non-obvious fan art. This is actually Jessie's work. So Jessie created these illustrations. You can see the videos on our channel. So Jessie was, maybe still is, obsessed with Animal Crossing. And she loved Animal Crossing so much that she did a lot of fan art inspired by these characters. And she actually turned the characters into Zhizhinkas. So a Zhizhinka is a human version of a non-human character. And you can see, yes, if you play Animal Crossing, you can probably recognize the inspiration, right? But it's not instantly recognizable. And she's changed up the characters a lot so that they're interesting, they have a personality, they're all interacting, right? So the example, on the left, you can see the characters are all kind of reacting to each other. There's emotion, there's storytelling, and on the right as well, an assortment of odd characters, inspired by the video game. But it has a lot of creativity and a lot of personal flair that to me is okay. So if I'm an adjudicator and I see this, I would probably think it's okay, right? But if I see, stuff that's instantly recognizable, then I would say not a good thing. Okay. So let me know if you have any questions about fan art. We can do an entire stream about fan art. But my next tip is less is more. Also, don't show too much. So like that other tip, don't do the bare minimum. Well, also don't show too much. There's a famous design principle called less is more. And the reason why you don't want to show too much is you only appear as strong as your weakest piece. So it's very unfortunate sometimes, we don't always have the best judgment when it comes to our own portfolios. Sometimes there's a piece in there that we really like, that we personally really, really like, right? So if I'm a huge Animal Crossing fan and I really want to put in my fan art because it means a lot to me, right? But it's fan art, or it doesn't really showcase my creativity, or maybe it's just like not as technically strong or as conceptually strong. So if you have one piece that is kind of weak, right, it starts to stand out next to your strong pieces. So this is a hard one. You have to learn how to be a ruthless editor. You have to be able to be very objective about looking at your artwork. And that's very, very hard to do because we are the creators, right? When you create something, it's like your baby. You are personally invested in it, right? So one of the best ways you can get away from this is to get a professional opinion. So, usually professional creatives will be able to tell you which piece is your weakest piece. And sometimes you'll have no idea, right? So always consult a creative professional, a teacher, a mentor, somebody that you can trust. There are also lots of public forums. And for example, I will be doing a portfolio critique as well, a live critique on Saturday. So if you want my opinion on, here are all the pieces I submit. Do you see any pieces that I should cut? I'll tell you. I'll be able to give you an objective opinion about it. And sometimes, maybe that weak piece can be improved. So it's not always you have to cut it. Maybe there's something that stands out. A lot of the times it's human proportions. So a lot of the times it's, the head is too big, or there's something that is technically wrong that's standing out. And those things can be very easily fixed, right? So the other thing is that some technically impressive pieces can be kind of weak with an idea. Like there's no idea. It's just kind of a study, or it's, just an observational drawing. There's nothing really special about it. And there are some pieces that have great ideas, but they can be executed better, right? So a portfolio is a good balance of technical work, like really good technical skills, as well as creativity and ideas. So don't show too much, be a ruthless editor, and remember, you only appear as strong as your weakest piece. Okay. So I mentioned Jessie's work already. Some of you have been following her live streams on Fridays. Jessie teaches digital art and illustration and mentorship at Wing Canvas. This is directly from her illustration portfolio. She had a lot of digital pieces. I think she had some traditional life drawings, and she had one traditional piece in her portfolio. And I was talking to Jessie about it, and she's like, oh, I should have put more traditional work. I didn't ask anybody. I didn't show anybody my portfolio. She can tell you the story. You can check out her portfolio example video and learn all about her mistakes, because we all go through, the same journey and the same stress when we are applying. Everybody is going through it. So you are not alone in this. Jessie's work is amazing. Like, she has the piece on the top left is actually a piece that she drew out of her head, that she dreamt up. Like, she has these creepy dreams, and very conceptual pieces. So the one on the top middle, is really kind of about our culture and like the decay of culture. Like, I really see some really, really strong ideas in her piece. She's also a comic artist, and she has a webtoon called Say Hello Grayson. It's a wonderful, wonderful series. I highly suggest you check it out. So she has a lot of comic work. So, she's a natural storyteller, comic artist, and concept artist, because she went to game design for a couple of years. So her portfolio was very heavily digital. And as much as, I believe digital art is real art, definitely is real art. It's very much, it takes just the same amount of technique and effort. However, art schools don't like to see that you're doing all digital pieces, because there are some digital shortcuts, right, that a lot of people rely on. Things like, you don't have to mix paint. You can just kind of choose your color, right? So things like that. And it also comes down to variety, right? Variety in medium. So you don't want to do all digital pieces, and you don't want to show only traditional pieces either, right? You want to show that you're exploring different mediums. So if you're applying for fine arts or illustration, show that you can paint in gouache, in watercolor, in acrylic, or, show that you are experimenting with collage or with sculpture and digital, right? So the more variety of mediums you can put in your work, the stronger it will be. Okay, so just because your work is exceptional, like Jessie's, right? She'll tell you the story. She got waitlisted, and it was absolutely heartbreaking for all of us, right? Luckily, Jessie is now in illustration at OCAD, but one of the things that she regretted was not putting enough traditional work in her portfolio. So let's talk a little bit about sketchbooks. Because sketchbooks are required in a lot of programs, a lot of visual arts programs. And the reason why people want to see your sketchbook is for your process work. So never underestimate the importance of process work. And, you may be thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have any process work. What is process work anyway? So just like in math class, right? If you think back to math class, your math teacher won't just accept an answer. They actually want to see your process work. They want to see how you arrived at the answer. They want to see all of the steps, all of the thinking and the logic behind it, right? So I'm not saying sketchbooks necessarily need to be logical, because a lot of the times they are just a collection of notes. They are scribbles and, stream of consciousness, doodles and things like that. And that's perfectly fine. But don't underestimate the process, the importance of process work. Because if I can see the way you think, then I am more likely to believe that you are like you are capable of making very original pieces, right? You're not just somebody who can copy something realistically. So just because you have very good technical skills and you can copy things is not enough. You need to show me that you have original ideas, that you take the time to think about what you're going to create. These things are all really, really important in a sketchbook. So a sketchbook is not supposed to be a collection of perfect drawings. So I think back to when I submitted my portfolio, my sketchbook was like perfect drawings on every single page, and some notes here and there. But your sketchbook really shouldn't be a perfect collection of drawings, right? Those are your actual pieces. Your sketchbook should be messy. It should be raw. So this example here is actually Jay's example that he shared recently. And you can see here that he's got his notes in his sketchbook. So this piece was actually about social media. And you'll see that the anglerfish on the right, so the final piece is actually over here on the right. So the anglerfish represents social media. So think about Facebook or Instagram, just kind of luring people in, and then the general public is represented by the goldfish. And so you can see he did studies of the goldfish. So he actually drew goldfish in different positions. He really studied the movement of them. He wrote down the meaning behind his work. And you'll also see that he's put tabs in his sketchbook. Because sometimes, when you submit a sketchbook, you can submit a video, so a video flip through, or if you hand it into an adjudicator, you can actually tab it so that they can look at your selects, right? So you can, if you don't want them to miss your sketchbook, because a lot of the time they'll just pick it up, flip through it, less than 20 seconds, and then they're done. So tabbing your sketchbook will really give them some visual cues, and they'll make sure, like whenever I see tabs, I'm like, oh, okay, this person wants me to actually look at specific pages. So I'm going to, make the time to do that.
Okay, so if you are thinking of creating a portfolio or thinking of making one in the future, just start today. That's the best advice that we can give you, is if you start early, then you actually have time to enjoy the process, to have fun and plan the pieces that you want to do, rather than, rush and procrastinate and stress and burn out at the end. So we see so many students suffer unbearable burnout because they started their portfolio too late. So what you can do to get started is just collect some of your favorite pieces, some of your most recent artwork, and then kind of see which gaps you want to fill, right? And then you can find a trusted instructor or mentor, someone who can share or appreciate, understand your vision, and someone who can give you really good feedback as well as keep you accountable. And if you are interested in actually working with some of our mentors at Wing Canvas, I can show you some of the programs that we are offering. So Wing Canvas is an online school of illustration. We are here for all the art nerds and the visual storytellers. If you want to be an illustrator, an animator, or work in the entertainment industry, definitely we are here to help. So some of our most popular portfolio programs are Art Mentorship and Art Intensives. And so Art Mentorship is our signature program for portfolio and for independent study. So if you're working on an independent project, like a comic or a series of paintings or something that you need independent support with, then Art Mentorship is a great option. We offer it weekly. and with live and recorded learning options. And in the wintertime during portfolio season over winter break, we offer it as a daily camp. So it's about 2 hours long, and it starts with critiques as well as custom demos. And it's a coaching program only limited to 6 live seats. And you will be surprised at how affordable and easy it is because it's completely online and very, very flexible. Our other program is called Art Intensives. So if you are looking to build on your portfolio to create new artwork and you kind of need somebody to guide you to create your best work, definitely check out Art Intensives. So I teach figure drawing every summer. We offer it live, and then throughout the year, you can take our hybrid program. So that's with recorded video content and live critique, as well as asynchronous feedback on all of your artwork. So we go over a comprehensive human anatomy studies following the GSL method, if you're familiar with that. And also, character design is a popular one with Josh. So you can learn how to not just design your own original character, but also build a world around it. So all of our intensives come in 2 parts. Part 1, we focus more on the basics, the theory, the planning, and all of the techniques that will help you in part 2, where we build on those and it gets slightly more advanced. So for comics and manga, part 1 is the planning, the writing, the composition, all of that. And part 2 is you actually create your comic along with Jesse. So if your dream is to make an original comic, comics and manga will be really, really fun for you. And then animation, if you are applying for animation school, animation, you will learn concepts, you will learn the tools. And we use Krita, which is a free program that you can use for digital animation, and everything here is hand drawn. So animation is with Josh, and Josh also teaches illustration. So if you want to be an illustrator, but you're not really sure about the process or about, careers and things like that, you can pick Josh's brain and get some really cool projects to work on, both traditionally and digitally. Okay, so quit procrastinating, go work on your art, and start today. If you need any other help or support, join our community on Discord. So it's free to join. It's also free to join our Patreon, but with our paid Patreon tiers, you actually get live critique as well. So if you want a flexible way of learning, there are so many ways that you can connect with us and find a mentor and make it work for you. So I hope you had a good time, and I hope you learned lots, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Let's get started. Okay, so our first question is, what are universities looking for in a portfolio? So if you are not sure and not really sure where to start, typically speaking, universities will tell you. So usually in their requirements, they will tell you what they're looking for. And sometimes the requirements are not very specific, and sometimes they're very, very specific. So it really depends on the program that you're applying for. But most universities are looking for variety in your portfolio. They're looking for the way you think. They are also looking for your technical ability. So it's a combination of everything. It's a balance between your conceptual ideas as well as your skills. And they also want to see who you are. So they want to see your personality. They want to know if you're funny. They really want to get to know you through your portfolio. So the more engaging and the more effort you put into your portfolio, the better. But my advice would be to read the instructions very, very carefully, because a lot of the times the universities will tell you exactly what they need. And if they don't, and if they say just something like, 10 to 20 pieces, then, then they're really leaving it up to you. But I would include lots of variety in those pieces so that they can see that you're exploring and you're very, very curious. Okay, so next question is, what do I do when I have no motivation or inspiration to draw? So this is also known as creative block or artist block, and I know that a lot of us go through this. Even professional artists go through this. I go through this from time to time. Sometimes you just don't feel like drawing, and sometimes that's okay. But if you're a portfolio student, it can be very, very stressful. So when I was interviewing Jessie, one of our other mentors, she was saying, when I have no motivation to draw, I try to make it fun for myself. I have to make it fun for myself. How do I make it fun? So, you can put on your favorite movie, and sometimes, you can just admire the simple things like the cinematography, or maybe, you sketch the storyboards out of that movie. I know movies always inspire me, especially animated movies that I really, really like. So, I'll put on my favorite movie, I'll put on my favorite music. Those are things that definitely motivate me. The other thing I would advise is to stay away from social media, because if you're on Instagram and you're just scrolling through your feed and looking at how everybody else's artwork is better than yours, that's not really the best way to motivate yourself. It actually can demotivate you, So there is a time and place to go on Pinterest and to go on Instagram to see who else is out there, and what else is happening. But a lot of the times, especially if you're in a bad mindset, you can kind of see that as, oh, I'm not good enough, or, oh, I'm never going to get in. And those are not good things. So you can recognize what your headspace is. If you're looking for inspiration, you can go on social media. That's totally fine. But if you are feeling already down on yourself, then that's probably not the best thing to do. So I would put on a movie or music. Welcome in, Riley. Thank you for joining us. So if you have any questions for me, please drop them in the chat, and I will make sure that I get to them towards the end, because we do have a lot to go through. Okay. Our next question from our survey is, do I have to provide process work for every piece that I submit? So the short answer is no, you don't have to provide process work for everything that you submit, because a lot of the times something you submit could be a figure drawing, right? And it could be a 10-minute figure drawing done from life, or it could be a sketchbook doodle, or maybe it's a still life, right? With a still life, you could show some composition studies and things like that, but usually observational drawing doesn't really need process work, because the process is observing what it is you're drawing. However, if you're submitting a piece that has an idea behind it, and may not be very obvious to the person viewing it, then I would say yes, include process work. Or include a description, a very short, succinct description that will tell me a little bit more about the piece and give me insight so that I can appreciate it better. So in a typical portfolio, let's say there's about 10 pieces, right? If there's 10 pieces in your portfolio, then I would say maybe show process work on 4 or 5 of them, as long as I can recognize the process work for your more important pieces or your more conceptual pieces. That is probably the best way to go. So welcome in, Gigi 1954. Good morning. Wherever you are, it's actually noon where I am, and it is snowing. So we're a Canadian art school, so we've had some crazy weather these days. It was 16 degrees a couple days ago, and now it's a snowstorm. So do I need to write a long description for every piece? And how long? So let me ask you this. Do you like reading long descriptions of artwork? So imagine yourself going to a museum. Okay, so let's say you're going to a museum and you're looking at all these pieces. Think about how long you actually stop and look at the description, right? Probably not so long. So I was in an art show one day, and I definitely I I definitely ignored most of the captions. And one time I was at the Artist Project in Toronto and I spent so much time writing these descriptions and poems about all of my work. And I noticed that over the period of 4 days, thousands of people came to visit my booth. Nobody really read the descriptions. There were maybe a handful of people. Now, obviously, that's a different context. But what I'm trying to say is nobody wants to read a novel about your artwork. They just don't have that much time. And adjudicators usually, they don't spend that much time looking at your work because they have so much to go through. So I wouldn't see a need to write a long description. How long should it be? It should be about a tweet. Okay, so it should be about a tweet or 1 sentence, maximum 2 sentences. And I went through this during the last stream about descriptions, but your descriptions shouldn't be obvious. So for example, if you're showing me a still life, you don't need to tell me it's a still life, right? I can see that it's a still life, but tell me a little bit more. Tell me ways that I can appreciate your still life more. So maybe it's the symbolism behind it, maybe it's your process, maybe it's the idea behind the still life or what it's trying to mean. So keep your descriptions nice and short and tell me a little bit more than I can see. Okay, so the next question is, does having an art style matter when applying to different fields? So does an art style matter when applying to different fields? It depends. So for example, if you're applying for illustration, right? Illustrators, typically when illustrators graduate from school, oh, hi there, Chloe. Welcome to the stream. Sorry, there's a little bit of a delay when people join. You didn't miss the critique. You made it on time. We are going through some questions first, and then we will go through the critique. So does having an art style matter when applying to different fields? It depends on the field. So for example, if you're applying for game art, maybe you want to have more game art style artwork. And if you're applying for illustration, style matters a little bit more. It's nice to see if you have a natural style, but it's always good to include variety, right? So some portfolios it'll be okay to have more digital work. Some portfolios, it's better for more traditional or to focus more on line drawing. Does having an art style matter when applying to different fields? It doesn't matter as much in art school portfolios as it does for professional portfolios. So if you're a professional illustrator, I definitely think art styles matter. If you are a graphic designer, your art style doesn't matter because you shouldn't really have a style. Your style should be about your project, right? So if I'm a graphic designer and I'm designing a line of baby toys, right? Labels for baby toys. And then I'm also designing, something for Wendy's, the Baconator, right? Those are very different types of brands and they're very different types of final pieces, right? So as a designer, your style depends on the project and the project's needs. But as an illustrator or a fine artist, style matters a lot more. Okay, so the next question is it necessary to have multiple portfolios or one for each school? So yes, it is very necessary to have a different portfolio for each school that you're applying for. The best thing you can do is cater your portfolio to that school and to that school's requirements. Because if you, and I've seen this before, I've seen portfolios that were made for another institution and submitted to me. And the person who, I shouldn't say person because I've seen it all the time. The people who have done this, sometimes they don't even bother to change the dear so-and-so. They leave it right in the letter, or I can clearly see that the portfolio was not meant for my institution. That doesn't leave a good impression. So always have different portfolios for different programs, because that way it's very, very tailored and you make the adjudicator or the school looking at your work feel like you made it just for them. So I would definitely say yes on that note. Is it okay to include more work than they ask for? So it depends. And I would say generally no, because you want to follow the directions. You want to follow what the school's requirements are and make sure that you read their requirements and the descriptions really, really thoroughly. So if your school is saying submit 10 to 20 pieces, don't submit 10 because that's the bare minimum. And don't submit 21 because that's too much and they didn't ask for 21, they asked for 20. So if you want to submit more, you can do the maximum, but I wouldn't do more than the maximum because you're asking for more time from the adjudicator. And that's not always a good thing. Okay. Next question. How do I balance the creative vision and ideas versus the technical skills? So I did mention before that in portfolios, you do have to have a nice balance of technical skill and creative ideas. And I see a lot of portfolios that have either one or the other. So some people have amazing ideas and lots of conceptual drawings and concept art and character designs, but it's not very well executed. On the other hand, I see some portfolios that have beautiful still lives and very, very pristine drawings and very realistic renderings of things, but they don't really have good ideas behind them. So I would try to balance it out so that it's at least 50-50, if not 30-70. If you're really, really strong technically, then maybe 70% of your portfolio shows your technique. So it shows that you can render really well, or it shows that you can, draw things very realistically and very detailed and clean. But you should include at least 30% of your work should have some kind of deeper meaning or some kind of idea and creativity behind it, because that shows how unique you are. Obviously, if you're going to art school, you're going to learn both of those things, right? You're going to learn how to be more creative. You're going to learn how to be more conceptual. And you're also going to work on your technical skills. So schools don't expect you to be perfect, right? They just want to see that you are aware that both things are just as important. Is it better to showcase a variety of mediums, even if I'm not as skilled? This is a really good question, because art school portfolios really want to see variety. Variety is super, super important because it, again, I can't tell you how many art school portfolios I've seen that's like 80% pencil, if not 90% pencil, or the majority of the work is portraits, or, I see 80% still lives. They're beautifully executed, but there's not a lot of variety. So to me, that doesn't really showcase the artist's curiosity. It doesn't show me that you're exploring and constantly trying new things. So having variety in your portfolio shows that you have an open mindset. You're willing to try new things. You're open to, learning and experimenting, and you're not just kind of stuck doing the same thing over and over again. So definitely include a variety. It's okay if you're not as skilled. Again, I think art schools are a little bit more forgiving than we give them credit for. Obviously put your strongest piece first, either the strongest idea or the strongest execution. Put that first, put a really strong piece last, and then you can sprinkle everything else in between. So the short answer is yes, it is still better to show a variety of mediums, even if you're not as skilled in them. Is there a specific format to be followed when making portfolios? So yes, there is a format. Make sure that your pieces are all the correct orientation. Okay, so don't submit pieces that are upside down. Don't submit pieces that I have to rotate because you're taking my time, and you should present it nicely so that you give me a good experience or the adjudicator a good experience. Right? Make sure that the lighting is good, make sure that your images are clean, that they're cropped nicely, that they're not distorted, that they have good lighting. Those are just the basics. File formats are another thing. So every school has a very specific requirement for the format. So sometimes you upload them online and they request JPEGs or, JPEGs not over a certain size. Those are all very basic things. Some schools will accept a video flip through of your sketchbook, right? So that's a video format, probably MP4. And some schools will accept JPEGs, PNGs. Sometimes they request PDFs. So read the instructions really, really carefully. Make sure that you're not pissing off an adjudicator simply for not following the instructions or making their job hard or difficult or annoying. So in a nutshell, the formatting is just being considerate to the person who is reviewing your portfolio. And it might seem like a very small thing, but it makes a big difference. Okay, so we are at our portfolio critique section. And first, for the portfolio critique segment, I just want to say thank you to all of the brave souls, the brave portfolio students who are putting themselves out there so that other people can really learn from their work. So typically when I give a portfolio critique, I will be very objective. Sometimes I'll correct proportions and sometimes I'll give you my first impression, but you don't have to, you may get lots of opinions about your work, but you don't have to take them all, okay? You are still in charge of your portfolio fully. So, take everybody's advice with a grain of salt. So I have looked at thousands of portfolios, so I have more experience and, I mentor students all the time on their portfolios, but you can even ask, your neighbor, or don't ask your parents. Your parents will think everything you do is great. But, you can get opinions from friends, from teachers, from colleagues. Those are all valid, but just make sure that you don't get overwhelmed and make sure that you're not trying to do everything to please everybody else, because your artwork is still your own. Okay, so I'm just going to get ready here, but Chloe is asking, do all the sketchbook pages I'm submitting have to have the same lighting? I've done work in different sketchbooks and have taken them at different times. Does it make a difference? Not really. Sometimes the lighting is cool. Sometimes it appears really cool. Sometimes it appears warmer. So you can do some things, like you can correct the lighting on your pieces. So what I typically do is I will take a photo of my work and then have the actual piece right next to it, and I will adjust the lighting so that it looks as close to my original as possible. You do want to keep the lighting consistent, so I recommend taking photographs under natural light and not under a really warm lamp, for example, because the lighting just won't look as good as natural daylight. So, I even recommend taking all of your photos at the very end when you've finished all of your tweaks and things like that. So, all right, so let's get started with our critique. So if you submitted artwork, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for getting your artwork in on time and putting yourself out there. So this first piece was submitted by Ebing. So Ebing, if you are watching, feel free to comment. So Ebing is applying for fine arts at OCAD University. So I assume that fine arts is also, I don't know if fine arts is the same as drawing and painting, but they want to see 10 pieces of artwork. So Ebing submitted one piece, and it's actually a very beautiful still life. So from what I can see right now, I think this piece is beautiful. I think it's very, very well executed. I really like the color palette. I like how it's muted. Really like the composition of the shadows and the lighting here in the background. I think it has a really good use of contrast the lighting is really what the focus of this piece is, and those very dramatic shadows. So overall, I think this piece is really well done. It seems like you painted it from life, and it seems like you captured the light really well. Just a couple of tips when you are preparing your portfolio, like the final piece, is right now it's kind of distorted, right? So you can see that it's not actually square, and sometimes it's difficult to take a picture with it being absolutely square. So the photo doesn't look bad, but what I would do here is I would actually select everything and I would transform it. So how you do that is, I'm just using Medibang here, but you can use Photoshop or any photo editor. So you can just go to the free transform tool. And if I zoom out here, you know, you can just make sure that you distort your piece so that it, or transform your piece so that it is less distorted. So I'm going to demonstrate how I would do that. Just like that. And then I would crop it. So I do like the edges of your piece. I think it's very painterly, right? It's not super, super crisp. And it maybe you put tape there and you can remove the tape for a really, really crispy edge. But if you want to keep that nice, loose, rough edge, then you can just go ahead and crop it, right? So if you cropped it like this, as long as it's square, oh, see, when I crop it, I can kind of see that there are some areas that are still painted over. So you probably just want to crop it so that it's nice and clean. And there we go. Yeah, so you can see when I crop it, right, I kind of lose the sense of how large this piece is. And, you know, that's something that is really good to include in the description, especially if you're submitting work digitally, because I can't tell the size now, right? Now that I've cropped it, I can only guess maybe it's 16 by 20 or something like that. But if the piece is really big, right? I don't know if you've ever gone to a museum and seen these like larger than life, these really epic paintings. So scale is a really, really good thing for your piece. If your piece is really large, I would make sure to put the dimensions in your description. Because if I saw this piece was 5 feet by 6 feet, it would be a lot more impactful, you know, than if it was 8 by 10. So size can make a difference. The other thing I would do is right now when I crop it, it looks slightly faded. So what you can do is you can adjust the levels. And so Photoshop is a little bit better with this, but you can generally, adjust, play around with the levels so that you get the maximum amount of contrast for your piece. And the one piece of feedback I have for this piece is this in the corner. So the reason why I pointed out is because it has very high contrast in this corner right here. And it's kind of not that important to the piece overall. I know it was in your still life and it just happened to be leaning up against the wall, but that doesn't mean you have to include it. And right now, when I look at the piece, this area has really high contrast. Like this probably has the highest contrast of any other part of your piece. So when you put high contrast on any part of your piece, you are emphasizing it, right? You're saying, hey, look here, this is important. And is it really important, right? What is the most important part of your piece? So I would argue it's this, right? So if you painted over this, or maybe just tone down the value a bit, it would be a lot more, personally, I think it would be better. Okay, so Yibing, good luck with your submissions. I hope you do really well. All right, so our next piece is Cece. So Cece is applying for, I'm just looking at my notes, illustration at OCAD, and the requirements are 8 to 10 pieces with variety. So that's a very specific requirement. 8 to 10 pieces with variety. All right, cool. So Cece, if you are in the chat, let me know if you have any questions. So this first piece I really like. I think it, first of all, it has faces. It has something kind of weird going on in the middle, which I really like. It's, to me, it feels more meaningful. Maybe it's kind of like your journey from childhood to now. That's kind of how I interpret it. I really like the mixed media. It looks like you're using paint and some kind of pastel, whether it's oil or chalk pastel. I think it's wonderful. I think it's a great piece for your portfolio, and absolutely include it. And just be sure that you put in some descriptions that can kind of help me appreciate it even more, because I already see that there's a cool idea behind it, right? But if there's something more personal or something more memorable that you think can make this piece more sticky in my head, right? More memorable, when I think back at the 100 portfolios that I reviewed, what can you do in the description that can really help me remember this painting even more? So Bharani says, for OCAD, they ask for either a video flip through or multiple page PDF. Consistent lighting may work in your favor. Yes, if it's a PDF and I'm going through all of your pieces, right? And some pieces look really yellow and some pieces look very cool, I can probably tell that that's a photography mistake. So I would definitely be more aware of that. So Cece, this piece is good as is. I think, you know, what you could do to improve it, technically speaking, is hair is usually quite soft. And I know that your hair provides really good contrast. It's looking, you know, it's framing the faces really, really well. I love the painterly feel of the background, but if you want me to focus more on the faces instead of on the hair, which is the highest area of contrast, consider just making the hair a little bit blurrier, just a little softer. So, you know, just kind of like here, there's a very soft blur, which is nice. It shows motion. And then here it gets really sharp, right? So my eye gets drawn to here, and it might not be as important as the faces. Same thing over here, right? So I think you could just like soften some of those edges. It'll take you a couple minutes, and I think it'll make a difference. Okay. So next piece, really like this hand. I like the color palette of it. I feel like it's very intriguing how it's, you know, purple and teal. So I really appreciate the color palette. In terms of proportions, I'm just going to point out a couple of things, especially because hands are so important when it comes to illustration and animation portfolios. So this joint right here looks a little bit funny. So if you look at your hand, right, you see how my hand, like here, this joint, right, it goes this way. It doesn't go this way, right? So right now that joint is going that way, and I feel like it looks a little weird, right? Because if you look at your own hand, usually speaking, right, this joint goes in the opposite direction, and the pinky should go this way, right? The pinky should have its own type of gesture. So just have a good look at your hands, and you know, I'm guessing you painted this from your own hand, but I'm comparing it to mine right now. I just have my hand held up here, and I'm just going to notate some proportion things that you can be aware of. First of all, our fingers taper, right? They're wider at the bottom, and they are not as wide as the top. So this part here, this finger here looks a little bit thin. So I think you can probably repaint that part and just give it a little bit more mass. In terms of the color palette, I really like the color palette. I think it's very unique, and I even like the roughness of the background. So I think, you know, I don't think you need to finish the background as much. You can kind of keep it nice and loose. I really like the kind of unfinished quality in the background because it brings my focus to the hand even more. All right. Okay, so this piece, I believe, was submitted by Alyssa. So Alyssa, if you are here, If you have any questions about it specifically, I feel like I'm not, I'm assuming that this piece is done. But the first thing I noticed when you submitted this piece is that it wasn't the right orientation. So when you submitted it, it was, not horizontal. And as somebody looking at your piece, I either, have to do this to look at it, right? Or I have to flip it. So I'm going to flip it to get a good look at it. Again, it's distorted, so make sure when you take the photos that they are not distorted. So just kind of like how I showed eBing, how you can transform it, make sure you transform it, make sure you submit it in the right orientation, because adjudicators don't really have the time to do that on your behalf. So this piece, I really like the yellow background. I feel like it's got a good emotion in it. It has pretty good emotional impact. I like the pose. I like the style of it overall. I feel like it's very well executed. A couple of things that I would suggest is right now your background color and your hair is not really harmonizing well, if you know what I mean. So if you don't know what that means, by harmonizing, I just mean that it feels very separate right now. So the white part actually feels very separate. The yellow part feels very separate from the blue. And I think what you can do is you can probably, again, you can soften the edges. So anytime you're drawing hair, right, and you do a really hard edge, it can look kind of mechanical. It can look not as natural. And again, it takes attention away from the part of the piece that you really want me to focus on, probably her eyes, right? Her eyes are paler in comparison to her hair. So I'm looking at her hair. Like I look at her hair first because it's the area of highest contrast. So this area right here has the most contrast, right? So what I would do is I would soften the hair. I would try to put a little bit of the yellow, you can put a little bit of yellow in the skin tone to make it feel more like she's in the space, right? Right now, she looks very separate from the space. So if you want to harmonize it a little bit, you can sneak in some yellows into some reflected light. So I can see you're putting a little bit of yellow right there, and I think that's working really well for you. But you can do that even more. And then with the blue, again, I would soften the edges of the hair and really try to put more contrast in the areas that you want me to look at. So I would say her eyes, maybe you can sneak a little bit of blue, just like hints of the blue in their eyebrows. I think that would make this piece even better. But overall, it's very well executed, and I definitely think it is portfolio worthy. This piece is by Daria. So Daria, your requirements are 10 to 12 original works in different mediums. So they're looking for typography, 2D, 3D, interactive, motion graphics, drawing, illustration, photography, painting. Holy smokes, they want to see tons of variety. So I would make sure that you include very, very different pieces in your work. If you have any motion graphics or any animations, basically like the more variety you can put in your work, the better, because that's clearly what the portfolio is asking. One of the things I want to commend you for, Daria, is you are the only person who named your artwork. You named it Daria hyphen Thinking of Angels, right? And so you were the only person that named your artwork that way. And I have to say, as somebody looking at artwork, even the title is telling me your thought process, right? Thinking about angels. So I can see that it's an angel, but I can definitely see that you've took the time to organize your files, to name everything so that it's nice and easy for the person watching it to to understand what they're looking at. So those very small things make a big difference. I really think that this piece is very intriguing. I love the different textures that you're using. So very good execution on the wings. They feel very soft, and they feel like I can grab on and feel the soft feathers on the wings. I think it's very well executed. Love the black background. It gives it really good contrast. The face definitely sparks my curiosity. I'm looking at it going, whoa, like this is a dark angel, right? It's not your typical angel. And that's kind of why I like it, is because when we think about angels, we usually think of sweet, babies, or, in those classical paintings. And here you're showing me a dark angel, more, almost kind of borderline scary or has attitude. And I find that actually really appealing. So I also like the texture that's kind of the halo, right? Instead of your typical round halo or the glow, you're doing a spiky halo. And I think that's amazing. I love the contrast in texture. I love your use of line. So I really appreciate Daria's use of the elements and principles here. So if you're ever stuck on a piece, go back to your elements and principles of art, right? So think about things like line, texture, shape, contrast, balance, right? Emphasis, all of those things that you learned in school that you're like, this is so boring, but those things definitely make a piece stand out. So what's making this piece stand out is the texture, your use of contrast, and the unexpected side of it. I also really want to comment on the red lines here. So I can't tell if that was done digitally after the fact, or if that was done as part of the painting. It kind of looks like a digital brush, but maybe it's oil pastel. I don't know. Let me know. But I really like how you're putting that red line, because it really makes the piece feel cohesive and unified throughout, and it kind of gives it a bit of a graphic look that I think is very appealing. Love, love, love your use of line here, or sorry, not your use of line, your use of color. There's a little bit of that red glow, right, on the face, on the reflected light of the ear. Like, that's excellent, because it really helps place that angel in that reddish light, and it helps unify everything. I also see you've put in some red along the halo. That's really, really nice. I can appreciate that. So yes, the angel was chalk pastel, and the red in the eyes are digital. Oh, interesting. Okay, I really like that too. So definitely put that in your description, right? If it's not easy to see exactly what mediums you're using for your piece, I would put that in the description. You can say this is a mixed media. I started it traditionally and I finished it digitally. I do that all the time, and I love that process. So definitely document that, especially for your program, because it sounds like that's what they're looking for. The one thing that I would suggest is right now, the face, I can see that you don't have a nose on your angel. And I can see that the mouth is kind of smeared, right? It reminds me of like smeared lipstick, which gets has a lot of attitude, which I like a lot. You could probably consider putting some more, just a little bit more detail in the lip. So for example, if I borrow your texture here, and I just put a little bit of texture, on that bottom lip, just like a little bit, right? Then it starts to stick out and have more form, and it also complements the red around the face. And the other thing that I want to point out is the nose that is not there, right? There's no nose, but that dark part right there almost feels like a shadow of a nose. So I'm trying to see a nose there when it's not there, right? So this is the part of the face that I would just kind of consider either toning down, either put a nose or don't put a nose, but don't put something that kind of looks like a nose, but is confusing. You know what I mean? Yep. So excellent work, Daria. Definitely portfolio worthy, and good luck with your application. Okay, so the last person who submitted their artwork for a critique submitted a lot of pieces. And so this is Maddie. And actually, Maddie was one of my students from Art Mentorship. So it's nice to see you back, Maddie. Thank you for submitting your work, and for so many, because it's really nice to be able to see so much work at a glance. So when I first saw this one, I was like, whoa, this is a freaky piece. I really like it. But I probably wouldn't put it first, because it makes such a strong impression that I'm like, whoa, right? I really remember it, but then I remember you as the person who does horror. So I think this piece would be good to put kind of in between your portfolio, just to show that you can break up your style, right? Put some sweet pieces in there, put some, you know, very, very scary pieces in there to kind of balance it out. Don't do like all horror, or don't do all sweet, right? Show your variety even in your subject matter. So I really like the juxtaposition between realism and abstract here. And I can't really tell what's behind this canvas, like if you cut it out and put something behind it, but I think that's really interesting. And a nice piece to show your you know, a different side of you, for sure. I also like the thread. I think that's a very cool mixed media piece, and I would love to hear a description and learn more about your thought process. So this piece, very, very different in style. Like it a lot. I think it is very, very fun. And I think it's all original. Like, I can't really I can recognize this character is inspired a little bit by the Simpsons character, or the Simpsons aliens. It looks a little bit like them. But overall, when I look at it, I feel like it's pretty original, and it shows me that you have a great sense of humor, and that you can illustrate cartoons really well. And I know you are applying for Queen's Fine Arts, and they want 20 to 30 pieces with no other qualifications. So no other specifics. They just kind of want to see a variety of your work. But looking at this piece, I feel like you're a natural illustrator. Like, I feel like you should apply for illustration, or at least consider it, because, you know, if you like doing this kind of stuff, you would love illustration, especially because this really shows your style. So unless this was directly influenced by something in pop culture or a show or something like that, I find that this is very original and really appealing. So I would include it in an illustration portfolio for sure. For fine arts, I would include it for variety, but for fine arts programs, they usually want to see more traditional work and more conceptual work. Love this poster. So I can relate and kind of see your style between this and this, and love the color scheme. I think this piece is really nice, and you can definitely include it in your portfolio because it shows that you have a good design sense. It's exploring typography. It does remind me of the posters from the 60s, and I think that's probably your inspiration, and that's okay. It's a lovely style. Okay, so some collage. I really like this piece. I think it shows your variety really, really well. Just gonna make this a little smaller so I can zoom in. So I think this piece definitely shows your style nicely, that you're trying different things. I think that collage is a beautiful medium, and it's very easy to do collage. You know, you don't need any materials. You can use scraps. And I think putting one collage piece in your portfolio, especially if you want variety, is a really good idea. And collage can be done traditionally. It can also be done digitally. So I see a lot of digital collage pieces as well. But definitely portfolio worthy. I think it is, I think that the way you capture the expression on this person is really good. Just like they're kind of annoyed, they're bored, they're looking at their hand. Like I can relate to this person very well. Some suggestions for this piece is where you are putting your contrast. So I can kind of see that the neck area here is very, there's very high contrast and very specific shapes on the neck. So it makes my eye go from the face to the hand to the neck. And I'm kind of just like looking at the neck thinking, is that supposed to be a shape? You know, it's very high contrast. So contrast is one of those things we don't really think about, especially when we're using a reference and the reference has that pattern on it, the pattern of shape. But I think you can consider toning the neck down a little bit. So you could do that with a glazing technique. So you can take like an acrylic wash or something and just kind of glaze that neck area to tone it down a little bit so it doesn't take over the piece. I also noticed the clock is not really a real time. So I'm not sure if that is supposed to be that way or if it's not supposed to be that way. It looks, so this needle looks like it's 9:30, but this looks like it's at the 20 mark, so it's a little bit off. Small detail, but something to think about. So some digital painting. This I thought was a photo when you submitted it. I think you did a beautiful job with it. Really nice work on the hand. I love how you blurred the foreground so that I see the eyes first and that this is not really as important. Beautifully executed, really nice job on the chain. I love your use of broken line there, like wonderfully executed digital painting. I don't really have anything specific about this piece. I think you should include it to show your variety and your rendering skills digitally. So this piece, this looks like an original character design. Also really love it. Love the lighting, love the character. You're really good at drawing hands. I can see you're really, really good at drawing hands. So you should put more of that in there. My initial comments on this is I think that the crystals right now have the same kind of texture and the same type of contrast as the skin. And I think if they're crystals, I think they can be they can have a different texture. They can feel more shiny. Maybe they can be a little bit brighter than your person, right? Like if I think about my skin is definitely not going to glow or not going to have as much contrast as a shiny crystal, right? So I think there's an opportunity here to make your crystals not just like have a simple blur around them, but to really feel like they're shimmering. So you can look at some references for crystals to get a better idea of how to do that. I think I've seen this piece before and I mentioned I really, really like it. I really love the style of it. I love the composition of it. And I feel like it has a very unique type of dreamy style. And I think you should definitely include it in your portfolio. But I do see a lot of digital pieces, so make sure that you're including traditional pieces as well, especially figure drawing. Like if you're applying for Queens for fine arts, right, put some figure drawings in there. I know you've taken my figure drawing intensive and I know you're really good at figure drawing, so definitely put some figure drawings in there because they're mostly traditionally done. So this piece looks like it's traditional. It definitely captures my attention. So any type of portrait that you do that has an expression on it is really good because I can't tell you how many bored faces I see when I look at portraits. So the fact that it has an expression is it's a really good thing. I think that it's a little bit unclear whether or not this is supposed to be stylized or if it's supposed to be realistic. It's kind of in between. The fingers look kind of long, so I would probably just fade them. Otherwise, they look not really as realistic as, you know, the wrinkles and the structure on the eyes. And you can probably soften some areas. Again, where do you want me to look first? The bottom of the nose is bottom lit, so it just feels very sharp, and it feels like, you know, my eye is going to the nose. So you could probably consider toning that down just slightly. And maybe being more specific with what you're going for in this piece, either in your description or in your execution of it. Okay, so I think this is the last piece that we are looking at today. So this piece is really well executed. I love that it's a simple still life and it has really nice shading and technique on it. It's got different textures, so it's got geometric shapes like the sugar cubes, and it's got these like organic shapes like the pastries, and it has a face which is super, super intriguing. So I really like this. I like the surprise of it. I think this piece is quite appealing, and I would definitely include it. Again, like this piece and the last piece, I can kind of see the way you paint noses is very stylized and kind of like a sharp edge along the bottom of the nose. I would look at that a little bit because usually speaking, this plane of the nose is darker unless it's directly lit from the bottom. So it can appear a little bit strange if you highlight it too much. All right, so best of luck, Maddie. Definitely, I see you as being a very good illustrator naturally, so you can consider illustration if you haven't already. All right, so that concludes the critique part of this. So I do have more questions to go through. So I believe I have 10 more questions, and then I'm going to tell you about some of our programs this winter designed specifically for portfolio students. So give me 1 second to bring back my other questions here. All right, so the other questions that were submitted, some of them are career related, but the first one is, how much time should you give yourself to create a portfolio? So this is a very common question, and it depends, because it depends on how skilled you are, right? It depends on how how much experience you have, how much practice you have. So if you've been drawing and going to art classes since you were 4 years old, you probably have enough skills under your belt so that you can, you don't need very long to prepare your portfolio. You probably have lots of work archived that you can bring back and you can tweak. But if you haven't taken any art classes, so if you're a portfolio student right now and you haven't taken any art classes outside of school, and you feel like your technical skills are lacking, then you need to give yourself at least a year to a year and a half. So if you're in grade 12 and right now, and you're preparing a portfolio for university, and you feel like you can get a sense, right, of whether or not your skills are up to par with some of the accepted portfolio examples. So if you feel like you need more time to develop your technique, allow yourself at least a year, sometimes a year and a half. So I have an example. So one of my students, and she's a superstar. So her name is Anna, and she was actually a guest on last year's portfolio night. But when she came to us, she had very little experience with art, very little technical skills, and she took, 3 classes at a time for a year to really, really build her skills. And we were drilling it into her. She took figure drawings, she took like all of these programs and dedicated the time, and she worked really, really, really hard. She drew every single day. And now she's applying for Sheridan Animation, and her work is top notch, and she got into one of the most prestigious art high schools. So, how much time should you give yourself? It really depends on your current skill level. So you know, if you listen to Jessie's portfolio examples, she'll say, oh, it took me 3 weeks. And in my head, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I could never build a portfolio in 3 weeks. Like, but Jessie is insanely fast. So, you know, it depends. So I would say between a year and a half to probably a few months. All right. So Dark Animal says, will you be doing another one of these? So today is our last portfolio stream of the season. Next year, I definitely plan to do more, but if you enjoy art critiques, we will maybe plan to do more of these on our channel, just to, you know, help people who are working on their portfolio and you know, to help with our mentorship program. Okay. How do I motivate myself when there is so much competition? So, how do I motivate myself when there's so much competition? Just know that you can't compare your beginning to someone else's middle, right? If I've been drawing since I was 4 years old and you've never taken an art class outside of school until you're in grade 12, you can't compare that to, you know, to somebody who has. And if you do, that's an unfair comparison, and that is just going to demotivate you, right? So just know that wherever you are on your creative journey, wherever you are, you know, either at the beginning, the middle, or at the end. And everybody has to start somewhere, okay? So if you're watching this and you're thinking, oh my gosh, I will never get there, you will. You just have to keep going and don't give up and draw every single day. So the biggest thing that you could do for personal growth and to really, really see results is to draw every single day. If you can make even 20 minutes a day to work on your art consistently every single day, that will do a lot more than dedicating one entire day every month, let's say, to work on your art. So consistency is key. Try to draw every single day, and just know that one day, once you've put in all the time, right, you will get there. So again, turn off your social media. Instead of spending an hour on social media, dedicate that 1 hour to drawing or painting or doing whatever it is that you need to do to work on your art. Okay, can speed paints be included in portfolios? So it depends. I love watching speed paints. I know speed paints just suck up so much of my time because it's very appealing and it's appealing to everybody. So if you do have a speed paint, sure, include it. I think that would be actually kind of cool, especially if you are applying for, you know, like a program that incorporates digital media. You know, speed paints can be good. They're definitely lots of fun, but you don't have to include a speed paint at all if you don't have one. And you don't have to include speed paints of every single piece either. It's just kind of a nice to have. Could I include nude figure drawings in the personal work section? So I think this person was applying for OCAD illustration. And I think OCAD illustration is pretty open. Like they don't really specify. I know Sheridan Animation and Sheridan Illustration, I think they specify that you need figure drawings. If they specify that you need figure drawings and you have more figure drawings, then yes, you can include them in your personal work, right? Your personal work is your own. So whatever you want to include in your personal work, that's up to you. So if you feel like your nude figure drawings are really good, then yes, definitely include them. Okay. Which careers value portfolios over degrees? So this is an interesting question. It's more career related and less portfolio, but portfolios are the same. Like the principles of a portfolio are the same, except that professional portfolios usually have a style, have more of a visible style, whereas school portfolios are supposed to show more variety, right? Unless you're a graphic designer. If you're in design or in media arts, or creative industries, or anything that is supposed to, you know, if you're in design, right? Or media arts, I think that showing variety is good. But portfolios over degrees, most creative professionals focus more on their portfolio. To me, when I'm hiring, especially when I'm hiring teachers or, creative people, creative professionals, and even, when we interview volunteers and co-op students at Wing Canvas, I value portfolios more than degrees because personally, I think you can learn on the job, right? You can learn, and these days we can learn on our own. We can learn through YouTube. Like, we can learn everything on our own. We have the tools to do that. So I want to see that you are creating art. I want to see your ideas. I want to see your humor behind your work, right? I want to get to know you behind your work. And I can't get to know you through a piece of paper that says you graduated from this school. So personally, I value portfolios a lot more than degrees. And I would say the same thing for most creative professionals. Most creative professionals value portfolios over degrees. So that would include illustration, animation, even graphic design. Like, I know a lot of graphic designers who didn't go to graphic design school. Like, I was a graphic designer for 7 years and I went to illustration school. So I didn't have a graphic design degree, right? I had an illustration degree, but being an illustrator gave me an advantage for being a graphic designer. So I could show that I understand typography and I know how to create, graphic design pieces, even though my degree was in illustration. So I hope that answers your question. Okay, is a personal portfolio passable for a job interview? Definitely. Definitely. I would just say cater your personal portfolio to that job interview, right? So if you're interviewing to be a teacher, right, and you want to teach art, then I would probably expect to see your demos for, let's say you're applying to teach art to kids, right? I would probably want to see some of the kids' demos that you made, obviously labeled, and then I would want to see some of your personal work. And I would want to see more variety. But if you're applying to create illustrations for a very specific project, then you probably want to show your style of illustration. So again, cater your portfolio to whatever job interview you are applying for and make sure that it's custom to them. How do you pick your best pieces that also fit within a theme? So a lot of the times I like to work in series. So a series would be like a body of work that all has the same theme. And I think especially if you're applying for fine arts, drawing and painting, your final thesis project will be a body of work that's around a theme, right? So it's a really, really good practice actually to work this way. And if you have a theme that can kind of showcase a collection of work, that is actually quite an advanced strategy, and I would definitely recommend it. So actually, one of our videos featuring Jay, who's a graphic designer, his portfolio had a lot of illustration pieces, and he worked in a series for one of his posters, for a set of 5 posters, and they all kind of have the same theme and they have the same style. So check out his video. We'll link to it in the description, but check out his video. It definitely will help you understand how to do that. And if you've never done that before, it can be something very simple. So for example, it could be a series about endangered animals, or it could be a series about personal growth. It could be a series about the toxicity of social media. Whatever theme you choose, just make sure that all of the pieces answer that theme, complement each other, and share a similar style. Are there specific mediums better for some programs than others? Are there specific mediums better for some programs than others? Certainly. So again, if you're applying for game art, for example, they probably would want to see more digital pieces. Because that's the nature of the industry. They all work digitally. If you are applying for shared in animation, they specifically ask you to draw in like with line drawings. Like animation schools don't really value the rendering and the shading as much as line work, and line being able to express form and volume. So they want to see you draw volume using just line, whereas for illustration, they probably want to see some rendered pieces. They want to see probably a mix of traditional and digital. So definitely there are some specific mediums better for some programs than others. If you're preparing a graphic design portfolio, I want to see typography, I want to see posters. And in terms of mediums, mix it up. Mixed media is always good. Show me that you're using and exploring different types of mediums and not just working in one medium that you're comfortable with. Okay, so I think this is the last question. Where do I find, or maybe second last question, where do I find good portfolio examples? So my answer is YouTube. So a lot of people who have got into the school of their dreams, or maybe they got rejected, they share their entire story on YouTube. Okay, so quit procrastinating, go work on your art, draw every day, and you will be great. Join our community on Discord. We have a growing community of art nerds on our Discord. And we chat every day, we share the artwork that we're working on, we give each other motivation and support, and we have a dedicated channel for portfolio students. So if you want to connect with me, or if you want to connect with other mentors on our team, definitely join our Discord. We will be posting a link in the chat as well as in the description of this video. So come join our community and share your work. All right, that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining. I hope that you learned a lot, and stay in touch. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Okay, so if you are thinking of creating a portfolio or thinking of making one in the future, just start today. That's the best advice that we can give you, is if you start early, then you actually have time to enjoy the process, to have fun and plan the pieces that you want to do, rather than, rush and procrastinate and stress and burn out at the end. So we see so many students suffer unbearable burnout because they started their portfolio too late. So what you can do to get started is just collect some of your favorite pieces, some of your most recent artwork, and then kind of see which gaps you want to fill, right? And then you can find a trusted instructor or mentor, someone who can share or appreciate, understand your vision, and someone who can give you really good feedback as well as keep you accountable. And if you are interested in actually working with some of our mentors at Wing Canvas, I can show you some of the programs that we are offering. So Wing Canvas is an online school of illustration. We are here for all the art nerds and the visual storytellers. If you want to be an illustrator, an animator, or work in the entertainment industry, definitely we are here to help. So some of our most popular portfolio programs are Art Mentorship and Art Intensives. And so Art Mentorship is our signature program for portfolio and for independent study. So if you're working on an independent project, like a comic or a series of paintings or something that you need independent support with, then Art Mentorship is a great option. We offer it weekly and with live and recorded learning options. And in the wintertime, during portfolio season over winter break, we offer it as a daily camp. So it's about 2 hours long, and it starts with critiques as well as custom demos. And it's a coaching program only limited to 6 live seats. And you will be surprised at how affordable and easy it is, because it's completely online and very, very flexible. Our other program is called art intensives. So if you are looking to build on your portfolio to create new artwork and you kind of need somebody to guide you to create your best work, definitely check out art intensives. So I teach figure drawing every summer. We offer it live, and then throughout the year you can take our hybrid program. So that's with recorded video content and live critique, as well as asynchronous feedback on all of your artwork. So we go over a comprehensive human anatomy studies following the GSL method, if you're familiar with that. And also, character design is a popular one with Josh. So you can learn how to not just design your own original character, but also build a world around it. So all of our intensives come in two parts. Part one, we focus more on the basics, the theory, the planning, and all of the techniques that will help you in part two, where we build on those and it gets slightly more advanced. So for comics and manga, part one is the planning, the writing, the composition, all of that. And part two is you actually create your comic along with Jesse. So if your dream is to make an original comic, comics and manga will be really, really fun for you. And then animation, if you are applying for animation school, animation, you will learn concepts, you will learn the tools. And we use Krita, which is a free program that you can use for digital animation, and everything here is hand drawn. So animation is with Josh, and Josh also teaches illustration. So if you want to be an illustrator, but you're not really sure about the process or about, careers and things like that, you can pick Josh's brain and get some really cool projects to work on, both traditionally and digitally. Okay, so quit procrastinating, go work on your art, and start today. If you need any other help or support, join our community on Discord. So it's free to join. It's also free to join our Patreon, but with our paid Patreon tiers, you actually get live critique as well. So if you want a flexible way of learning, there are so many ways that you can connect with us and find a mentor and make it work for you. So I hope you had a good time, and I hope you learned lots, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.